You are like an oasis in the grim desert. And as far as what I can offer you, a life with a brilliant and witty genius.
I have to go.
No, this is your last offer. You must not be an ingrate.
Goodbye, Stanley.
I will not stand around here, cap in hand, waiting for some halfpenny con artist to be my bride. This is it. You don't agree now? Offer's off the table. Do you hear me? You irritating Lilliputian! You're throwing away your passport to paradise!
Make me a channel of your peace. Welcome back to Life Lessons in Film. Today we're going to be making sense of life through magic in the moonlight. It follows Stanley, who is a magician. He's also a part-time debunker and proves mediums and mystics to be charlatans. And so he gets a request from one of his friends, who's also a magician, to see if he can debunk this one particular medium, who his friend claims even he couldn't find a flaw. Stanley's interested in this idea, this challenge, so he goes to France, where the mystic is, and tries to debunk her. But can't.
We discover that the friend Howard, who enlists his help in debunking this whole operation, we discover that actually Howard and this medium Sophie are working together to just kind of pull one over Stanley.
You feel no remorse?
Why should I feel remorse?
Hoodwinking a lifelong friend.
I see it quite differently. Hoodwinking is what we do. Now, you've got to understand that since we were boys, I have played second fiddle to that egomaniacal, self-regarding...
Genius.
Yeah, he's a genius at what he does, and I turned out to be a mere mortal.
As Stanley's spending time with the mystic, trying to figure out her trick, he starts to fall in love with her, and then there's something burgeoning going on under the surface.
Before falling in love, he starts believing that, okay, maybe she is a medium after all. Maybe there is life beyond the physical.
He's a very rational, science-based person, but he's miserable. And then he starts to enjoy things and feel a new sense of life and hope and wonder. That's pretty much the gist. Example for me of one of the main themes, I think, of the movie is what is the purpose of things like faith, belief, hope, illusion even. You got the one extreme, which is Stanley, who is a miserable curmudgeon. Cynical,
nihilistic.
Doesn't believe in anything beyond the material. He feels like that's the proper way to live if you're going to be a realistic, intelligent person.
Yeah. He says it. What you see is what you get. There's nothing more than that in life.
To think there were more to life.
More what? That life doesn't end with death? That the universe works by design?
That God exists.
All right, let's not get carried away. The woman is a charlatan. Because depressing as the facts of existence are, they are the facts. There is no metaphysical world. What you see out there is what you get. I think Mr. Nietzsche has disposed of the God matter rather convincingly.
And then you got the other end of it, which is some of the people that say attend the seances that the medium puts on. And they are so willing to believe in all kinds of stuff. The afterlife or spirits.
Life having more meaning beyond the things that are tangible.
Yeah.
That's basically the main theme.
Yeah, because at the end when Stanley exposes his friend and the medium, she retorts back at one point. She's like, yeah, but didn't mean nothing like us hanging out. Like you were happy for once. So what if, we played a joke on you? You started to really smell the flowers instead of, you started to do all the things that you've done 1,000 times, but you actually started to really live.
Yeah.
Doesn't that
like
mean, isn't that worth something? I mean, I do wonder what is like the perfect medium. You don't want to be 100% gullible, 100% believing everything that I guess anyone tells you, because then you're going to be getting confused all the time and taken for granted and taken advantage of all the time. It's no good. Just be lost in so many illusions. But I think it's balance.
I think sometimes when people take issue with any kind of idea of the metaphysical, they more so do that coming from a position of looking at the metaphysical in a very linear way, first of all, and then looking at it from people who don't allow themselves agency in the way that they interact with the metaphysical. Some people go to church understanding that the Bible was written by a man, and I'm going to take everything in the Bible with a grain of salt. But then there's some people who are no, every single thing that happens in the Bible, I'm going to take it, black and white. That's how ISIS happens. It has very little to do with religion itself. It has more to do with the people. For example, looking at the Catholic Church, for example, right? You have priests that are great and you have priests that are naughty and shouldn't be priests at all. For me, I think love exists in the metaphysical.
I think so too.
When he goes to the hospital where the aunt has been in an accident, he starts praying. He's looking at things with possibility. Like you said, he now stops and smells the flowers. Like he says, I've been walking past this space before and I never actually took note of my surroundings. He's happier. He's just a different person.
Yeah.
And life just feels so much better. Existing feels much better, much more than what he is before. Absolutely cynical and just
protects himself by making sarcastic comments without getting too close to people. And I actually think that was probably maybe a defense mechanism for him. I'm probably as a kid, I imagine getting into magic originally, he was probably in awe and wonder seeing magicians that inspired him, right? So he was totally about living in those illusions and wanting to know how this magic was being created.
Yeah.
Then probably after years of getting so good at it himself and then seeing how easily he fools and tricks the audience, that he just starts to completely get disillusioned with all the illusions, right? And so as another way to protect himself, he gets very rational and he gets very cold, emotionally just cut off.
Yeah.
But then, he looks down on people that have faith or religion or believe in anything past the material yet. And then when he's actually faced with really like the one person that he cared about, is like I said, his aunt basically raised him. Once he's faced with the person he was closest to in his life emotionally, possibly passing away, is when he really actually does start to see the benefits, or it starts to kind of come over to the understanding of why people have faith in the first place. I know I went through it, probably a lot of people do when you're younger, and you have those phases of like, you look down on certain things that people have gone through things because you yourself just haven't gone through anything. As a teenager, you have no responsibilities, you have no real issues. A lot of teenagers don't. So you're very cavalier with a lot of stuff about life because you just haven't had to face it yet.
And I know that I'm also guilty of this, where I would look down on people who believed in God. How could you believe in something that you can't see? That was for me, that was my logic. Another logic would be, well, the thing about religion, it makes no sense to have people believe in something just because if you don't believe in it, you're going to go to hell, so you're believing in it out of fear. And also you believe in God because, well, there's the afterlife. You're going to be rewarded, some kind of reward coming in the afterlife. And so how is that even altruistic? These were conversations that I would have growing up. And one thing I realized about that, first of all, was that we were also very religious. A lot of times you think religion there has to be God present. But if you're agnostic or an atheist, you also have a very religious, you are a lot of times, some of them, who are anti-God, they'll be, and very overtly so, they have a very evangelistic way of presenting their views, like trying to shake people who have faith out of their faith. And I'm like, why are you so invested in why anybody, how anybody lives?
Yeah.
Those people standing in the street, they're trying to win you over to their church. And if you are going to church, well, our church is better than that church. So you should come over to them. That's basically what...
I think that's a very easy go-to purpose for a lot of people. And you need purpose in life too. Get up in the morning, everyone needs purpose. But I think a very easy go-to is to try and convert people to your way of living, whether it's worshiping the same way, same political party, same sports team. All the groups of people are always trying to make their blob a little bigger and take away from the other people's blobs. I think you can find purpose other ways, but I think that's a one way a lot of people decide to do it.
Anybody can have faith in anything. I think if you are someone who has faith in the rational, go ahead and have faith in the rational. But is it making you happy?
Right.
If you are if you're a pragmatic person like Stanley is, Stanley wasn't happy at all. He's happy when he starts having faith in the spiritual. And so for me, I would say, Stanley, maybe go and play for the other team because that's where you're happiest. Yeah,
if you believe that happiness is the goal that's what you should strive for.
Yeah, if you want happiness in life, I mean, for me personally, I'm like, yes, I want happiness. If I find happiness in the metaphysical, I'll take it. If something makes me happy, I'm going to go for it. I don't want to question it. And I feel the same way about love, for example. I remember I used to have this whole idea of love as you have a choice in love, and then I also thought, if I'm a certain way, like if I'm soft and sweet, then I have to date someone who's exactly the opposite, who's hard, so that we can balance each other out and so people don't take advantage of me, And I remember I met this mentor, I would say to me, who was like, well, if you're soft and sweet, then you better meet someone who's soft and sweet, because someone who's hard like you want, if they're going to be hard towards other people, they're going to be just as hard to you. The way that love kind of works, as far as I've discovered, is that it doesn't really care about your vision of what love is going to look like.
It just works. I don't need to
question it. I don't need to sit here trying to scientifically figure out.
Don't need 100 studies on it.
Yeah, I don't need 100 studies on it. I just know that it makes my life so much more meaningful, and I act with much more hope and faith than I used to before. But at the end of the day, it's all faith as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I think we all need our illusions. It's not just those that are deemed simple-minded. We all need our illusions now and then, or need illusions all the time, but they're just different kinds of illusions from other people. Some people might be, they're in a VR headset all the time. That's a very obvious idea of an illusion that people are living in to distract themselves. But we all have our ideologies as an illusion. Certain things that drive us, or certain belief systems are illusions,
Yeah.
When Stanley was upset that his friend and Sophie had pulled a quick one on him, he was, insulting them, and she's like, well, no, you're just being a grumpy stick in the mud, like, why are you being so mean? And he's like, we didn't really do any harm. He said, well, you ruined my reputation. And she's like, your reputation was all ego.
Yeah.
And I like that because, and like in his case, I think a lot of it is, but I'm like, also, what reputation isn't ego? Isn't that what reputation is? It's like what people generally agree about this other person and what that person agrees about themselves. It's like this kind of non-physical, like abstract agreement on the value or worth of something. It's kind of like how we decide that money is worth something. They always say when, people chasing after reputation is an ego-driven thing that doesn't give you lasting happiness.
Which boxes do I have to check off in order for me to be this vision of a man or woman that I want to be? They're based on external ideas beyond yourself of what the woman that you're aspiring to be must look like, isn't it? Whatever you do is not based on what you actually want to do. It will be based on whatever ideas of the kind of man or woman you think will be reputable in the circles that you're moving in should look like, right?
It's an illusion like anything else. You can believe you have a good reputation, and then people are like, no, you don't. Or depending on what circles you're in, the circle you're in, it's like, yeah, that person has a great reputation. And if you're outside that circle, you think that person has a terrible reputation.
Yeah, a lot of times people take you more seriously when you are in a serious relationship. And sometimes people will just stick it out in bad relationships just because I now have this certain standing in my social circle because I'm in a relationship and I'm in a lasting relationship, and my friends are breaking up. Here we are still forging on. Then you have this idea of, look, well, like I'm definitely...
I have the reputation of someone that can make a relationship last.
Exactly.
Again, it's an illusion.
Yeah.
In the sense that it's like, okay, so outwardly you feel like you're capable and you're doing well or doing better than others or whatever.
Yeah.
You're this person that can do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But inside, you're suffering. That's what I mean where I'm like, yeah, reputation is ego, it's illusion. But Stanley, again, it's kind of that reminder for me that have the humility of, even if you are the greatest magician in the world and a very intelligent person, a very quick, witty person, and he has a lot of strengths in certain areas. But the better you are at one thing, most likely the worse you are at something else. He's a very rational, well-read, traveled person. But when it comes to love, vulnerability, and romance, he just falls flat on his face, right?
Yeah.
When he's trying to express himself, probably because he's out of practice.
Exactly.
He might be
so bad.
He practices card tricks all the time on his own, so he's very skilled at that. But when he's trying to express his feelings towards Sophie, it's tough. He's really struggling.
I came to say that for some inexplicable reason that defies common sense and human understanding, that I have of late experienced some quite small, but discernible inner stirrings regarding your smile.
How magnanimous of you.
Yes, I thought you'd think so.
So again, it's that humility of like, don't act like you are just in every way better than someone else.
Exactly.
Because there's no way that can happen.
I loved Stanley's aunt. I liked her because she doesn't push anything on Stanley. She's just watching this guy, understanding that my nephew is gonna fight to the end for what he believes in, even though his heart, his subconscious has completely gone to the other side. It's just kind of checked out, left the chat, and is just somewhere over yonder in the realm of the metaphysical. But he's just fighting to stay true to his worldview. I like her because she's completely gentle with him. She's like, it's okay. Of course that's what you believe in, right? I like that because she's not really condescending. The way that she interacts with him is more allowing a platform for him to reflect and to kind of come to the conclusion on his own that, you know what, I like the not being cynical. I like feeling good and happy. I like the fact that he gets there on his own, even though she wanted him to get to that point. I like people like that because at the end of the day, I think you can only really ever find a reward in something if you got there on your own. As much as people can be well-meaning and maybe they have more experience than you do, and they may be right, but it will only matter if you get there on your own and you learn the hard lessons as well. And so I really liked her for that.
The whole thing with his friend, who was the magician, and him, and he was talking about he was envious because he felt like they were just as skilled, put in just the same amount of time, and yet Stanley's the one that took off and got famous and celebrated and everything.
So he wanted to trick him.
He wanted to trick him to make him feel in one way like, well, if you think you're so much better, well, look, I was the one that actually fooled the great magician.
The greatest,
You know?
After years of trailing in his wake, and I admit some envy and resentment, I have finally put one over the great wailing Sioux. I have fooled the man who could not be fooled.
Understandably, if people really do feel that sense of entitlement and inferiority, that they're going to feel the need to kind of equalize the relationship in some way. But I also then like when Stanley, he's like, well, first of all, life's not fair. So when you say it's not fair, that he's like, I think it's downright nasty a lot of the times. And like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I guess that just didn't work out the way you were hoping for. That's life again, and, to say that. But he's also, and then I like that he also added, but also, you didn't actually practice as much as I did. I actually put more effort in, I put more practice in, which, might have just been a subjective opinion of his, but also knowing what we know from Stanley, and that he's probably spent many, many times, instead of socializing because he was a misanthrope, he would just practice his tricks over and over again. So most likely his friend did seem like the more social one. So there's a good chance that actually Stanley did put more practice into his craft, and so it shows up in terms of his performance. But that's something a lot of people that are envious don't want to admit, is they want to believe that they put the same amount of effort in, not realizing that they actually didn't. You can hold an instrument the same amount of time, but were you actually practicing, or were you actually working on dexterity and connecting your brain work to your what do you call these things? Meat hooks.
Yeah, there's two sides, you could have people who were putting in the same amount of work.
Fingers! Sorry, that word escaped me.
Maybe he was practicing as hard, although I don't know. I don't know if that was really the case, but maybe he was. But sometimes that happens. Some people have just much more capabilities for something over other people. And that's okay. That's really fine. I think it's something that you gotta accept. If you wanted something, but someone is better at attaining it and is more successful at it, you just have to accept it. This guy was successful in his own right. He wasn't as famous as Stanley, but he did pretty good for himself. And so I don't know how good a friendship that is, at the end of the day, where you're kind of comparing yourself to your friend to the point where you're so envious that you're gonna enlist some woman to lie to your friend and just kind of like, I'm gonna dethrone you. That is not a friendship whatsoever. And that is really the epitome of envy. That is an awful way to live. I think accept your capabilities and it's okay. Work with what you have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Also, it's recognizing too that with more, say, success or bigger production values of your sets versus another magician's production, there's more stress, there's more work involved. Stanley comes off his performance and he feels like he's, now it's partly because he's just a grumpus at the beginning of the movie, but also he's just complaining. He's like, everyone's an amateur, and this that went wrong, and this didn't work out, and you didn't.
There's more stress.
There's more stuff that comes with that.
Exactly,
too, as well.
And he's just better built for it than his friend, who wants this thing that he probably may not even be able to handle as well as Stanley can. We all face a lot of pressure from parents, from family, from ourselves. Things that we see society in general will be killing ourselves to achieve these ambitions. Only if I'm as good a magician as Stanley will I be taken seriously. I want to be taken seriously, but why? The only reason people don't take you seriously is because you don't take yourself seriously. It's not about anything. It's not about religion. It's not about faith. It's not about your friend. It's not about the external. It's always about you. Whatever happiness you're trying to find, you're the only person who can charter the course of your own life in a way that will actually get you to that point. That's how I feel about Howard. I feel like I was Mrs. Rambles.
It's okay. Sometimes we're Mr. and Mrs. Rambles.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, that's some stuff that we considered, thought about with Magic in the Moonlight. What do you guys think? Please let us know down below about your thoughts on our thoughts and your thoughts on the movie or anything in general. Till next time.
Bye.
Bye. It's a wrap.
He is quite an artist. Oh, he began as an escape artist. Interesting choice, if anyone ever wanted to escape from reality. But, like Freud, he will not permit himself to be seduced by childish thoughts just because they're more comforting. Very unhappy man. I like him